if you look, the 45, 45, 90 is the very first one that we are going to start with. And that is an isosceles right triangle. So one of your angles is a right angle, 90 degrees, and then the other two angles are 45 degrees. Which means my two legs, the two that form the right angle, are going to be congruent, and then your hypotenuse is a different length. Okay. So what I want you to fill in on this picture is the reference triangle for a 45, 45, 90. My two legs are going to have a length of 1. Okay, so on your paper, on your two legs, the one that is vertical and the one that is horizontal, I want you to put 1. This is a reference triangle you're going to need to use. Now, I will put them on the board for you when we take our quiz next week. However, you have to make sure you know how to use them. Okay, so you need to know them, but I'm not going to make you memorize them. And then, so the leg has a length of 1, and then my hypotenuse has the length of the square root of 2. Okay, this is called our reference triangle for a 45, 45, 90. Again, the two legs, the two that form your right angle, have a length of 1, and your hypotenuse has a length of the square root of 2. Okay. And then it is saying that in this little box, it says that the legs of a triangle, of a 45, 45, 90 are always going to be congruent. That's why they're both 1. Is everybody okay with that so far? Okay. What we are asked to do is find the value of each missing variable. And if you will notice in my picture, it has my right angle marked, and it has one of my angles as 45, which means the other angle also has to be 45, making this a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So the very first thing I want you to do is we are going to draw our reference triangle, but we're going to make it look like that, which means off to the side or below on your paper, what I want you to do is I want you to draw another right triangle and make it look exactly like the one that we have in our picture for our example. Okay, so right beside or below that example, I want you to draw the triangle in the same position. And what we're going to do is we're going to label the sides using our reference triangle. What are the lengths of the two legs in that reference triangle? What did we just write down? What are the legs? Look at the top of your paper. 1. Okay, so I'm going to put 1 for both of my reference, or for my legs. And then my hypotenuse is
2.
Not just 2, but the square root of 2. Okay, so do you see how I drew my reference triangle I made it look exactly like the picture, turned in the same direction and everything? Okay, so we're going to start with x, and we're going to set up a proportion just like we did last chapter. What is in the same place as x in my reference triangle?
8.
No, in the reference triangle, 1. Okay, so x and 1. So we're going to write our first fraction, our first ratio of our proportion. So x over 1 equals, going back to the triangle where the x is, what is the only other side length in that triangle that I know? 8, okay. And so what is in the same place as 8, but in my reference triangle? 1, okay. So the other part of our proportion is going to be 8 over 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to solve this for x. We're going to cross multiply and solve. Because we talked about radicals for the past 2 days, we are leaving these in what we call simplest radical form or exact form, no decimals. Does everybody understand that? This problem doesn't have a radical in it at this point, so we're okay. Now, let's cross multiply. Remember how we did that? Start with your variable. What's x times 1? Come on, guys. X times 1. It's just 1x, right? And then we do the other product. What is 1 times 8? 8. And then I solve that for x. In this case, is there anything that I need to do? No. So what does x equal? 8.
Why you put the 1 and the 2 1? Oh, never mind.
Because that's the reference triangle that we wrote down at the top. Is everybody good with that? Because I'm about to erase that proportion and start over again.
Yeah.
All right, we still have to solve for y. And so let's start. What is in the same place as y in my reference triangle? Square root of 2. So our first ratio is going to be y over the square root of 2. And then again, we're going to go back to the regular triangle. The only other side I know is 8. What is in the same place as 8 in my reference triangle?
1.
And then we're going to cross multiply and solve again. Start with your variable. What's y times 1? Y. And then think back to what we've done the last couple of days. If I multiply 8 times the square root of 2, is that going to be the square root of 16? No, it's just going to be 8 times the square root of 2, because the 8's not under the radical, the 2 is, therefore we can't actually multiply them.
I'll put a 2 instead of a square root.
Make sure you put the square root.
That's a square.
All right, is there anything else I need to do to solve for y here?
Yeah. No, ain't that you can do.
No, it already says what y equals, right? What does y equal?
Y equals 8.
8 squares of 2. Make a little bit of sense? Okay. All right, ready? We're going to look at 2. What we need to do is, again, draw our reference triangle, but this time we want to make it look just like this picture. So below your picture, the one that's given to you, go ahead and draw your reference triangle. Well, yeah, they tell it. Well, right now, all we're working on is 45, 45. Once we get to the 30, 60, 90, we'll have to pay attention to the angles so that we know which triangle to use. But right now, we're focusing just on the 45. Is everybody ready? What are my 2 legs again in my reference triangle?
1 and 2.
1.
1
And the hypotenuse is
2 squared.
the square root of 2. Okay, so what I want you to do is first set up your proportion for x. Okay, try to set up your proportion for x. Start with x. What's the same place as x in our reference triangle? What's in the same place as x in my reference triangle?
45.
In the reference triangle.
Oh, 2.
Square root of 2. So we're going to go x over the square root of 2. Go back to my original picture. What's the only other side length that I know? 25. And what is in the same place as 25 in my reference triangle?
1.
1. Cross multiply and solve that one for x, please.
Oh, it's not. He's got a. Damn.
Say that one more time. Well, it's the square root of 2. It's not just 2. It's the square root of 2. So think back to the past 2 days when we dealt with radicals. Can you actually multiply those numbers or not?
Wow. You just put this.
Okay, cross multiply. What's x times 1? X. And then if I do 25 times the square root of 2, it is just 25 times the square root. Always put the square root second. Okay, because the 25 is not under the radical, you cannot actually multiply. Is there anything else I need to do to solve that for x, or does it already tell me what x is? That's the answer. Okay, so x is going to be 25 square roots of 2. Now I want you to do the same thing for y. Set up your proportion for y. would you solve that for x? That says x times the square root of 2, right? So how would you do that? How do you want to do that? So now let's cancel, right? And then think about what we did yesterday. Are we allowed to leave that square root of 2? Right? I'll have to fix this in there. All right, what is in the same place as y in my reference triangle? 1, so we're going to go y over 1. And then the other side that I know in that picture is 25, and it is also in the same place as 1. That just lets me know what kind of triangle it is. Right now, all we're dealing with is 45, 45, 90. We have to talk about 30, 60, 90 in a little bit. Maybe, if we get to it. We'll have to see how it goes. Cross multiply, and I just get y equals 25. Okay. The 45 degrees tells me that this is a 45, 45, 90, which tells me which reference triangle to use. We still have a 30, 60, 90 triangle that we're going to talk about, which has a different reference triangle. So that's what the 45 does, is it lets me know what triangle I'm talking about. Everybody ready? All right. Now, number 3 is going to be a little bit more difficult to solve, but what I do want you to do is start out by drawing your reference triangle and making it look just like the picture in number 3. So draw your reference triangle right below. You're going to be drawing that reference triangle for each problem because you're going to turn it however your picture has turned.
And you're going to flip the script.
Sure. Okay, we're going to draw our reference triangle just like the picture. My 2 legs are 1. My hypotenuse is the square root of 2. Ready? What's in the same place as x in my reference triangle? Yes, Kingsley.
I thought that was a 19 I was supposed to go there.
No,
Okay, that's the, okay, never mind.
your reference triangle is always 1, 1 square root of 2. All right, and then what is the only other side length that I know in my picture? 19. Okay, and what's in the same place as 19? Square root of 2. Okay, again, this one is a little bit more difficult to solve. So we're going to take it slowly. Let's cross multiply. If I do x times the square root of 2, that is just going to be x times the square root of 2. Look how I wrote it. It's just x and then the square root of 2. And then that is going to equal 1 times 19, which is just 19.
Killer, Miss Bridges.
Now, in questions 1 and 2, once we cross multiplied, we didn't have to do anything to solve for x, right? Because it said x equals. This one doesn't say that, does it? This one says x times the square root of 2 is equal to 19. So what I need to do is I need to get x by itself. How do you undo multiplication?
Division.
Division. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide both sides by what's next to x that I need to get rid of.
2.
Not 2.
19.
No.
Square root
Square root
of 2.
of 2. Okay, so we're going to divide both sides by the square root of 2. What happens over by the x is those cancel each other out, and I now am just left with x, correct? All right. I cannot divide 19 and the square root of 2 because 19 is not under the radical. The square root of 2 is. Here's the question. What we talked about yesterday. Am I able to leave my answer like that?
Yeah.
No, we are not allowed to leave a radical in the bottom of a fraction, right? We did this yesterday. How do I get rid of it? We called it rationalizing the denominator. We have to multiply the top and the bottom of the fraction by not just 2, but the Square root of 2, yep. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply top and bottom by the square root of 2. I'm going to come up over here because I'm running out of room. So at the top, it would just be 19 times the square root of 2. At the bottom, that would turn into, what is the square root of 2 times the square root of 2? Square root of 4. And then just like we did yesterday, we're going to simplify because that 4 is a perfect square, right? What is the square root of 4? 2. So that's going to turn into just 2 now. And then the last thing we're going to check is if we can simplify. Can I simplify anything there? No. The 2's cannot simplify because one is under the radical, one is not. And then 19 and 2 do not have anything in common. So guess what x is equal to? 19 square roots of 2 over 2. And that is exactly how we'll leave our answer. Okay, so a little bit more complicated in the solving process because it has that radical in the denominator. What I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and try y. Had you guys already done that? They might not have taught it to you this way, or they might have taught you just the rules to remember. Because 40 is not really matter because the things are the same. But 30, 60, it matters what your angles are. So you have to be careful with those. Okay, we're setting up our proportion and we're solving for y. Some of you may start to see what happens with the 45, 45, 90. And what was written in our box that said that the legs of a 45, 45, 90 are always what? Congruent, right? And the legs are always the two sides that form your right angle. So sometimes, or if you start to see it, you'll recognize if I can find one leg, then I automatically know what the other leg is. If not, you can always set your proportions up and solve. Anybody want to take a guess at what y is? 19 and square root of 2 over 2. Yeah, it's the same thing as x, right? Does everybody see that? These are my two legs, so those are always going to be congruent. However, if I don't see it, I can set up my proportion. Y is in the same place as 1. 19 is in the same place as the square root of 2. And just like we did before, we cross multiply. Then we have to get y by itself. Then you have to rationalize because you cannot leave that square root in the bottom. Come up here. And then we end up, once we simplify that perfect square, to get the same thing. So 19 square roots of 2 over 2. Is everybody okay with that? All right, try 4 all by yourself. Whole thing. Both x and y. Ooh. Oh, there's just an x there. Try it. Draw your reference triangle. Set it up and work it out. I want to see how many of you can figure it out. Yeah, hold on just a second. Let me draw that reference triangle. Remember, draw your reference triangle, make it look just like your example picture. The legs are 1, the hypotenuse is the square root of 2. When you think you have an answer for this one, let me see that. We'll see how many of us can figure it out. We've simplified the radicals for the past 2 days. That's gonna help us. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Mr. Ross's desk in the media center. I don't know, she wasn't in there, but I just laid them on her desk. Okay. Yep, this is set up correct. I'll just tell you. Yep. All right, we ready? Does everybody see how my reference triangle is? What is in the same place as X in my reference triangle? Okay. And then going back to my example, the only other side I know says 7 times the square root of 2. What's in the same place as that in my reference triangle? 1. Is everybody okay with how that's set up? I saw most people had that part set up correctly at least. When we multiply, X times 1 is just X. Here's the thing. When I multiply these two, if I do the square root of 2 times 7 square roots of 2, think back what we did 2 days ago. When we multiply radicals, remember we multiply the numbers in the front. What's in front of this one? And this one. A 1. So what's 1 times 7? 7, okay. Then we multiply the two numbers under the radical. The square root of 2 times the square root of 2 becomes the square root of 4, right? Is everybody okay with that? So we get 7 square roots of 4. And I saw some of you leaving it like that. It's not wrong. It's just not completely simplified because 4 is a what? It's a perfect square. So I need to simplify. So it's going to be 7 times what is the square root of 4? 2. And so then 7 times 2 gives me 14. And so 14 is my answer. Okay, so a lot of you had 7 square roots of 4 and you just left it there. So just make sure you simplify completely. If the number under a radical is a perfect square, it needs to be broken down. Try 5. 5 is going to be very similar to 4. This one you can't simplify. Yep. if you have finished 5, go ahead and try 6. If you have gotten an answer for 5, go ahead and work on 6. If you did 5, go ahead and do 10. Drawing my reference triangle just like it is in the picture given to me. Remember, your legs are always 1. How do you know the legs? Those are always the 2 legs that make your right angle. And then we can start our proportion. What is in the same place as x in my reference triangle? Square root of 2, okay. And then in my picture, I have 2 options to choose from. Does it matter which one I choose? No. What is in the same place as either 5 square roots of 2? 1, okay. So then we're going to cross multiply. X times 1 is x. And very similar to what we did here, the square root of 2 times 5 square roots of 2 is going to be 5 square roots of 4. And then 4 is a perfect square, so we need to simplify that. What is the square root of 4 again? 2. And 5 times 2 is 10. Okay. So x is 10. Is everybody okay with that one? All right, keep working on 6 if you haven't finished it already.
So the square root of 2 doesn't equal 2. So you have to have the square root of 2 right there, which would equal 4. Does that make sense?
If you haven't finished 6, go ahead and work on it. Keep working on it. Because it says x equals, right? That's your solve.
I thought you said pick up his hand.
I didn't say anything about that. Did I?
Yeah, it's 10, yeah, I just said, yeah.
Oh, no, not 10. That's 36. No. Just do 6. If I said 10, I didn't mean to.
So we've done that on all of this. So your hypotenuse is only 10.
No, you started at 4.
I'm gonna heat up the lotion and then get done. I don't have to wash my hands with that soap. Huh? Come on.
Drawing our reference triangle. What's in the same place as x in my reference triangle? Square root of 2. Okay. What's the only other side I know, or I actually know 2 of them, and it doesn't matter which one? They're both what? 8. And 8's in the same place as 1. So then we cross multiply. X times 1 is just x. And the square root of 2 times 8 is just 8 Square root of 2. Is there anything I can do to simplify that?
No.
No. So that's my answer. Anybody have any questions? All right. We're